Iran.
One of the world's oldest nations with a colossal history and breathtaking monuments of architecture. A land that has been under crippling sanctions for more than 40 years, and yet sits on some of the planet's largest reserves of oil, natural gas, and minerals. Back in the mid-1970s, Iran looked like this. And then, within just a few years at the end of that same decade, it became something completely different. And here's a strange paradox. In today's Iran, despite unemployment and sanctions, you can very easily and perfectly legally become a millionaire. How? We'll get to that a little later. Even more surprising, did you know that Iran is among the world's leaders in plastic surgery? Yes, the level of cosmetic surgery here is considered one of the best in the world.
A land of contrasts.
The country's official name is the Islamic Republic of Iran. It lies in Southwest Asia, covering an area of 1,648,195 square kilometers, 636,372 square miles. It borders Turkey, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan. To the north, it meets the Caspian Sea, and to the south, the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Iran is home to nearly 100 million people, and what's striking is how young the population is. About a third of Iranians are under the age of 30. The official language is Persian, the capital is Tehran, and the national currency is the Iranian rial. The highest point of the country is Mount Damavand, a dormant volcano rising 5,610 meters above sea level, 18,405 feet. But to understand how Iran has changed and why it looks the way it does today, we need to dive into its history.
From Persia to Iran.
Iran is one of humanity's oldest civilizations. The first mentions of organized society here date back around 5,000 years. For most of that time, the country was known to the world as Persia. Only in 1935 did Persia officially become Iran. Modern Iranian history is sharply divided into two completely opposite eras. The first was under Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran. A ruler who admired everything Western and tried to break away from many Islamic traditions deeply rooted in society. Pahlavi dreamed of creating a great civilization, propelling Iran into rapid industrial and military modernization, and launching sweeping social and economic reforms. The government poured money into industry, technology, agriculture, education, and healthcare. Women gained almost complete freedom, with access to education, jobs, and personal expression. Imagine this. In the mid-1970s, women in Tehran walked the streets in mini-skirts, with loose hair, freely showing their femininity, and it was considered absolutely normal. New foreign cars cruised down Iranian streets, while people dressed in the latest Western fashion. In many ways, it looked more like Europe or America than an Islamic country. Oil money was flooding into the treasury. The nation was modernizing at a breathtaking pace. But then, the dream began to crack.
The downfall of the Shah.
By the late 1970s, the money was no longer enough. The Shah was notoriously extravagant, lavishing fortunes on palaces, luxury, and spectacular receptions for foreign dignitaries. His personal wealth was estimated at around $50 billion in the money of the 1970s, when the dollar's purchasing power was far greater than today. Just imagine what that sum meant back then. Corruption was rampant. Most of the oil revenues were being embezzled by the elite. Modernization of agriculture also backfired. Millions of peasants lost their jobs as machines replaced human labor. Uneducated and unwanted in the cities, they built sprawling slums on the outskirts, becoming a growing force of discontent. This anger was quickly harnessed by Islamic fundamentalists. They promised to restore traditional Islamic values, bring free education and healthcare, and provide jobs. And for many impoverished Iranians, those promises sounded far more appealing than the Shah's lavish banquets. In 1979, the Islamic Revolution erupted. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was overthrown and fled into exile in Egypt, where he died a year later. At the helm of the new Iran stood Ayatollah Khomeini, and with him began the second, opposite chapter of Iran's modern history.
The Islamic Republic.
What followed was a full-scale Islamization of the state. The supreme leader became the highest authority. Women were forced back into hijabs. Opposing the regime became illegal. A morality police was established, working alongside regular police to ensure public obedience and to enforce religious rules. The new leadership embraced an aggressive ideology, calling for the destruction of Israel and the Jews, citing their own interpretation of religious texts. Iran began sponsoring radical Islamist groups across the Middle East, creating proxy forces for its holy war. Inevitably, this destroyed Iran's relations with much of the developed world. Severe sanctions followed. Until 2022, Iran was the most sanctioned country on earth, only surpassed later by Russia. And yet, beneath the surface, dissatisfaction with the regime has been growing year by year.
Protest and resistance.
One of the most dramatic moments came in 2022. A 22-year-old student, Mahsa Amini, was arrested by the morality police for improperly wearing her headscarf. She was beaten in custody and later died in the hospital. Her death ignited a firestorm. Thousands poured into the streets across Iran. Women publicly cut their hair and burned hijabs. For 2 months, protests raged, violently suppressed by the government. More than 400 people were killed, thousands arrested. And yet, something changed. Today, you can increasingly see women in Iran walking with uncovered hair. The morality police look the other way more often than before. The government, it seems, has drawn conclusions and prefers not to ignite another nationwide explosion of anger. Especially after its recent humiliating defeat in a direct clash with Israel, when Iranian air defenses were crushed, military infrastructure destroyed, and its nuclear program suffered heavy losses. For now, the regime prefers to mask defeats with propaganda, rather than provoke its people into open rebellion again.
Tehran, a megacity under Smog.
Tehran, the capital, is a true megacity. Densely populated, sprawling at the foot of the Alborz Mountains, just 90 kilometers, 56 miles, from the Caspian Sea. The majority of its residents are Persians, Azerbaijanis, and Mazandaranis. But life here is harsh. The city is plagued by one of the worst environmental situations in the region. Almost permanently, Tehran is shrouded in smog. This choking haze comes partly from numerous industrial plants in and around the capital, but just as much from the endless stream of old cars on the roads. Public transport is poorly developed, leaving people no choice but to rely on private vehicles, many of which date back to the 1970s and 80s, built long before any environmental standards existed. The result? Dirty air and widespread respiratory diseases among Tehran's population. And while the city suffocates, the chance of renewal is slim. Import taxes on foreign cars are astronomical, almost equal to the price of the car itself. Combine that with sanctions, and only the wealthy can afford modern vehicles. The majority keep driving patched-up relics of the past.
Oil, sanctions, and survival.
Iran holds the world's third-largest oil reserves, after Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, and the second-largest natural gas reserves, after Russia. It also has significant coal, copper, iron, manganese, and lead deposits. Agriculture accounts for about 12% of the land, and the Caspian Sea's rich fishing resources provide vital income, especially from caviar. About half of Iran's state budget comes from oil. But how does Iran sell it under sanctions? With ingenuity. By mastering the art of deception. Iranian tankers switch off tracking systems, forge documents, change flags, conduct ship-to-ship transfers, and use shell companies to move crude oil. Behind it all is a shadow financial network designed to bypass sanctions. The main buyers? Countries like China, Turkey, India, and Syria, those unwilling to fully enforce restrictions. And despite sanctions, Iran's shops are full of global brands. electronics, clothes, cosmetics. You can buy it all, but prices are 2 or 3 times higher.
Life of ordinary Iranians.
Because international systems like Visa and MasterCard never operated in Iran, the government created its own payment system. Shah. It's everywhere. You can use Shah cards to pay in supermarkets, corner shops, even tiny stalls. And Iranians prefer it not just for convenience. With inflation sky high, nobody wants to carry around literal bags of banknotes to make simple purchases. Remember how we said you can easily become a millionaire in Iran? That's true. $20 exchanged into rials makes you a millionaire, give or take. $100 gets you a mountain of banknotes. But perhaps the most shocking detail for outsiders is the price of fuel. Gasoline costs just 3 cents per liter. That's about 11 cents per US gallon. In other words, for a single dollar you can buy 33 liters, or nearly 9 gallons of gasoline. Here, fuel is literally cheaper than water.
A country of paradoxes.
And yet, in the global rankings of living standards, Iran sits at 126th place. Not just because of poverty or unemployment, but because such rankings also weigh freedom, safety, healthcare, education, governance, and personal rights. And in those areas, Iran fares poorly. The average monthly salary? Around $420. Many Iranians long for change, but few dare to speak openly, knowing how harshly dissent is punished. This, then, is modern Iran, a land of contradictions, where ancient heritage collides with modern repression. The birthplace of Omar Khayyam, the setting of the tales of 1001 Nights. A country of enormous wealth and crushing poverty, of breathtaking beauty and suffocating restrictions. A nation forever balancing between the past and the future. And that's all for today. And as always, stay curious.